Welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with Brandon Handley. Because you're already great at everything else, why not fatherhood too?
What is going on, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us? Brandon Handley here, the host, the creator of Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. We have been on quite the journey, guys. Always having a great time with you. And thank you for being here. This podcast doesn't work if you're not listening to it. Anyways, with that being said, I just want to, it's a privilege for me to present this conversation that I had with EricEaton. He is the author of a book called The Raging Sloth. He is in the process of finishing up his next book, The Thrival Guide. He's also the co-founder of the Knights of Heroes Foundation, which initially started with providing a space for young men who have lost their fathers in the military. The camp that he runs is out in Colorado. It's really, it's an amazing camp that he's running. It's helping these boys to become better men. It's helping them to be able to move forward in their own lives. He's doing this helps them to become what he calls boundless. I love that term. These boys are going in there. It's also available to girls. That's been available, I think, in the past 5 years. But this is it's a fellowship that is created with these boys that are able to go to this camp. They're able to, and the girls as well, where they have somebody and they have others that are similar to them who've gone through a tragedy like this, and they're able to lean on each other and have discussions that they can't have in school because there's nobody else that they can talk to that's had a similar situation, and so I think that that is just amazing. This camp it lasts about a week, and many kids are able to go through multiple years. He's also, listen, I just think it's amazing what he's doing out there. He's also got it so that moms are able to go out there and they're able to kind of have a similar interaction as the children, where they're able to create some type of a fellowship and learning from each other, and being able to have somebody to lean on who's gone through the same things. Guys, I know I say it all the time, but really there's a lot in this one that I think is very welcome, especially to anybody who I highly recommend you share this if you know of a mother who's gone through this situation, or if you know of a child whose father was taken from them too soon, that was in the military. There may be other situations where you could also reach out to Eric and his group and find out how somebody else may be able to qualify. He also recommends just how awesome it is to be able to build confidence in these young children, and kind of where that comes from. Listen, we talk about quite a bit, and it's all on point, and I just can't recommend it enough that you do listen to this one, and also share it, please. And also reach out to Eric and let him know that you heard it here on Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. Let him know how grateful you are to know that there's somebody out there giving to the world on this level. Outside of that, guys, as always, please, if you are enjoying the experience of Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, please reach out to me. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Contact me at brandon@fatherhoodfortherestofus.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you would be so kind as to run on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and a review, that is going to help others to share this experience with us as we go through fatherhood. I don't believe that anybody should do this alone. It's a difficult task. It's awesome and rewarding task all the same, but it's a lot easier to do it with a group. And to that end, I've also created a private fatherhood group, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, on Facebook. Hop on over there if you haven't joined already. There's plenty of men in there who are contributing, who are just facing fatherhood head on, and we are there as a resource to you to lean on, to go through it with you. If you're challenged by anything, hop on in there, share your challenges. If you are celebrating how awesome fatherhood is, hop on in there because we are doing that in there as well. And I want to celebrate with you. Other than that, guys, as always, I'd also like to throw it out there that if you are looking for an accountability partner, if you're looking for somebody that, maybe social media isn't your thing, maybe groups aren't your thing, if you're looking for somebody to help you take the next step in fatherhood towards being the father that you want to be, let me know. Reach out to me. We can do that too. Just schedule some time. You can do that at reconstruct.brandonhanley.com. There's a place there where you can go ahead and schedule some time. Enjoy this podcast, guys. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, fatherhood for the rest of us. I am on with EricEaton. He's one of the founding members of Knights of Heroes, and he also has a book called The Raging Sloth, which I love the name of that book. I listened to one or two of your other podcasts earlier today, Eric, and I heard you got some grief on the name for that. But what I want to ask you before we even get started is, what kind of awesome things can we celebrate for you today? What's going on that's great in your life today?
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. And I think where I am right now is I just finished writing my second book last week, and so that was a huge kind of accomplishment and hurdle, and not just having a one hit wonder and one book out there, but being able to kind of get another idea and bring it into fruition was pretty awesome, and finally get to that point.
Well, that's great. What is it? Is it a follow up to your first book, or is
Yeah,
it something entirely different, in a different
yeah,
direction?
it's kind of a follow up. I mean, after I released my first book, and there's a lot about the chronic pain I deal with, I was having all these conversations with people about. They weren't necessarily in the place I was, but they were dealing with distractions. They were dealing with issues. They just didn't know how to move forward in life. And so this one's called the Thrival Guide,
The
and it
Thrival
deals
Guide.
with a lot of the distractions that we deal with, the stress, the worry. It's all these things that they kind of compound in our lives that we take for granted or we dismiss, but they're having a dramatic effect, not just on our lives, but the realization that it's keeping us from our good work. It's keeping us from doing something awesome. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
the real tragedy. So how do we eliminate a lot of that junk so we can do better work and become the people we were created to be?
Well, when's that release? And we can have that conversation too.
Right.
Awesome. That is awesome. That's definitely something more. So now, how far along? You're just finished it. When's it released? Honestly.
Yeah, so I just finished writing, so I'm getting in the editing part, and I hope to have it released in February. Is what I'm shooting for.
Outstanding. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations. So what I wanted to talk to you today about was this Knights of Heroes organization that you are a founding member of, and what it is. Correct me if I'm wrong in any part here. Is that it is primarily for children who have lost their fathers in military active duty. Is that correct?
Correct. So any type of issue that may have come up, from active service to health issues to even suicides, we've had with a couple of the fathers and families we've dealt with.
Okay, so are the suicides, are they military related as well?
Yes, generally, people, they come back with PTSD, or they're struggling and not wanting to get redeployed again, or trying to adapt to life back in the States, and the real struggle that they deal with that we don't hear enough about.
Is the PTSD and not being
Yes.
able to kind of get the help that they need?
Yes, exactly.
Right. Do you find that, like, most of the times that or some of these people, they just don't have somebody to kind of talk to, or they're afraid to talk?
I think it's a combination of issues, just from what I've learned over the years. I mean, one of it is just the military lifestyle. I mean, you're taught to man up, to be all you can be, and you go out and you see these horrendous things happening over there, and that adjustment back is challenging because you're supposed to be able to handle it. You're supposed to be able to deal with it. And in many cases, you don't. So you don't reach out, or you don't know how to reach out or where to reach out, and then, or it's not handled properly. I think especially over the last 10 years, I think things have gotten much better in how we're dealing with it and the support we're giving our troops. But I still think we have a long way to go to make it something viable.
I got you. So this group, how was this group founded? The Knights of Heroes.
So it was back in 2006. There's a good friend of mine. He's lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, F-16 pilot. And we'd actually been going through a study, learning about, how do we become better men? And it was a few guys and that were going through this study. And then Steve and I were kind of having these off conversations about how do we raise, godly, manly boys, because we both have two boys roughly about the same age. And it was during these conversations that his good friend, who was an F-16 pilot named Major Troy Gilbert, his F-16 went down in Iraq, and he died saving numerous troops, but he left behind two boys. And so Steve kind of came to me and said, what do we do for these boys? I mean, we can raise our boys, but what do we do for these boys who don't get a chance, who don't have a father to to teach them the things that we're trying to teach our kids? And that's kind of where the idea of the camp came from. And Steve came up with it and said, hey, we should start a camp. This is what I would want for my boys if I was in that situation in the military. And this is what I think Troy would want. And so we had this conversation in November of 2006, and we actually had the first camp in June of 2007. And we look back and, man, it was rough because we had no idea what we were doing.
Sure. What did that first year look like for you guys setting that up?
Yeah, so we had 16 boys, mainly reaching out to Gold Star families, and through different organizations, we came up with six boys that we started with. Two of those boys were Troy's boys, Boston and Grayson. And they were very little back then. But we started our camp, and we kind of fumbled our way through it. We made mistake after mistake because neither of us knew what we were doing. But we had the heart, right?
Sure. Yeah. So let's also give the audience, the group here, a little bit of a background as So what is your background and how? I know you mentioned raising godly men. What is your background and kind of your servant's heart, and what led you to believe that you were kind of the right person to be doing this?
Yeah. So when I left college, I joined the business world and consulted for several years. But through the process of dealing with a lot of pain, I was struggling doing that after I had multiple surgeries, and kind of the evolution of trying to figure out next steps. It led me to seminary. And so shortly after that, I became a pastor, and I pastored a church for 8 years. And so it was during this time that I was working with Steve, and he was in our church, and we were meeting constantly and talking about this. And it is where my heart is to serve others, is to raise them up, not only through my last book, but, this upcoming book. How do I help people, and become better, become more than who they think they are? Because I truly believe God's given us these unique talents and gifts, and we're called to do something greater, but we have to enter into the work that he's doing and become what we call boundless in camp. And it's attaching yourself to something greater than yourself. Right. And that's what this camp is for me. I mean, it's been an unbelievable blessing. And I tell these kids, I'm like, you have no idea how you've changed my life. I mean, right. I'm hoping I'm changing yours. I'm hoping I'm impacting you, but you have hands down changed my life, forever in such an amazing way.
Absolutely. I mean, you get to see them as they kind of come in, and I imagine initially when they first come in there, if it's the first time there, that they're kind of a little shy, standoffish, and then by the time they get out of there, everybody's kind of like best friends, and they've got a camaraderie of having kind of gone through similar. A lot of these guys have a similar background, right?
Right, and that's what we see the most is a number of times you see kids show up and by the first night they're just, I want to go home. I can't do this. And I'm kind of the camp counselor, and I've learned throughout the years, I really don't have to say much to them. I find one of the older boys who've been there a while, and I hook the two up together. And usually by the end of that night, they're settled in. They're like, okay, I'll at least I'll give it another day. Right. That's kind of the normal scenario. And it's amazing and unbelievable. By the end of the week, they're like, man, I can't wait to come back here next year.
That's awesome.
Because what you said is one of the reasons is, it's a place where they feel like they belong, at their schools or in their towns. They may be the only kid around who's lost their father, and specifically in military service. But when they get into these settings with all these other kids in the same scenario, they feel like, I'm not alone. There's other people out here who know exactly what I'm feeling and going through.
Right now, that's huge because they can have somebody they know that they can talk to, and that's great.
Exactly.
That's great. So how long does a camp last? Is it just 1 week?
Yeah, right now we're just doing 1 week in the summertime, and they show up on Sunday and leave the following Saturday, and mainly because we just purchased our own property last year. So this last summer was our first year where we had everyone, both boys and girls, on one camp. So it's pretty amazing to see what that looked like, and then see how we can grow from there.
Okay, and you got you've got a fair sized piece of property, right?
Yeah, we have 118 acres on the backside of Pikes Peak outside of Colorado Springs.
That's awesome. It's definitely beautiful down there. What I'm just curious, like, what happens with the property in the other 51 weeks?
Well, we're still doing a lot of work on this, so that's part of it. But we do retreats, so we bring up like in a couple of weeks we'll have a retreat with some of the kids who weren't able to come to camp because of schedules or whatnot. So we're going to bring them out, and during those times we just kind of hang out, try to do some service projects. So we'll paint some of the cabins or work on some of the stuff, but also just have some fun on the property and enjoy what we have out there.
Well, absolutely. So you've got if I'm on your site, you've got a number of different programs, and you kind of talk through your first 2 third-year boys. So I mean, you've got people coming year after year now. What is like the first what does that week look like? Let's talk for the boys, right? What does that first week look like?
Okay, so like the first and third year, so we hook them up one-on-one with a male mentor or female mentor, depending upon which side they're on. But they get one-on-one mentorship and have a male mentor that's with them every part of the journey. And so throughout the week, we're going river rafting and rock climbing and mountain biking. We went water skiing this past year, which was a new thing for us, but was very well received. So we'll probably have to do that more often.
Sure.
And it's really the idea are what things would we do that their fathers probably would have done with them? And a lot of that is just getting them outside. So, the boys spend the week sleeping in tents, and that first and third year, when they get up into, we have kind of a low adventure and high adventure. So the low adventure, those kids go out for like 3 nights and do about a 25, 30 mile backpack across Colorado. And then the high adventure, they do about a 50-mile backpack for about 4 or 5 days across Colorado. So it's progressive, and it's interesting to see these boys who came in that first year and the first and third year, and I didn't want to do anything. They did not want to hike. They did not want to river raft or rock climb. They said no to everything. And to see these same kids like 5 years later do a 50-mile backpack across Colorado, helping other kids along the way, is just phenomenal. I mean, to see how much they transform throughout the years.
That's amazing. And your heart's got to kind of swell up a little bit when you're seeing all this go on.
Oh,
and you feel great for these boys and girls, right? So how long have you been doing the girls? The girls have been allowed or been a part of this. When did that open up?
Yeah, so this is our 5th year. This past year was we had with the girls. So we had a wonderful lieutenant in the Air Force named Katie McDowell. She came in and kind of took over the girls program because we knew it was something we wanted to start, but we really needed a female lead in order to take that over. So she's come in and just done a phenomenal job with these girls. And for the last 4 years, they've been at a different site than we are. And so this year was the first year we actually had them all on site, which allowed us the ability as male mentors to be with them throughout the entire camp. And so I was one of those mentors that got to be with the girls, and it was just phenomenal just to be able to spend the entire week with them and kind of do life with them throughout camp and see where their hearts were. Because it's, as you can imagine, the girls like to talk a lot a lot the boys. So you learn a lot more.
Sure. I can only imagine. Imagine. I've got 2 boys myself and my wife. And so you guys offer like a fatherhood influence for the girls as well? Is that
so that's what we're trying to get to with the girls is being able to offer that to them. And one of the things I've done for the past 4 years is one night during camp, I get to sit down and they get to ask me anything.
Right.
And so I sit down with them and they ask me anything. They don't hold anything back.
What if some of the, I mean, I'm curious, like now is that open to everybody or just the girls that are able to ask you anything?
It's mainly the high school girls, so some of the older girls and junior high as well, just because of that's a tough age group for the girls. But I mean, they asked me about dating and sex and drugs and self harm and issues that they're dealing with.
Wow.
We're very well aware of the issues that the absent father can cause. So trying to address those head on with some of the girls, and I'm very appreciative of the conversations and the trust they have and being able to talk with us. And I'm hoping that that something's resonating, may not now, but somewhere down the road that that some truth can be spoken to their lives and they can live more free and open in how they are living their lives.
No, that's awesome. Is there an open line like back to you guys somehow from like when these guys get home? Is there like a open line of contact where you develop this trust and kind of like a friendship, and maybe they feel like you're the only person that they can talk to? Is that available?
Yeah. So what we try to, that's why we do that one-on-one mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
So with the first through third year, so they do have a contact, someone that does check on them, see how they're going, see what they're up to, if they need anything. I've been very fortunate since I've been in the program so long is, I have, boys and girls that are in high school and beyond that are still texting me and I still get to catch up on it and check in with, even though they've graduated from camp and they're on to different things, just to see how their lives are transforming and the impact they're making in their own little world.
That's great. What is do you have what have been some of like the largest transformations that you've seen through this camp? Even like not like even over time, not just the first week.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially this last year, just getting to see that young man who did the 50-mile hike. We had another young man that we graduated. We graduated last year, and that's a big ceremony we do at the end of camp. I'll briefly touch on because since it's the Knights of Heroes, I get to dress up as a knight, and so I get to wear a full knight outfit, sword, helmet, everything. And we bring the boys in and we charge them. We say we tell them about being responsible and being a leader and being proactive and being boundless, and we charge them that that a lot's been given to them. It's time for them to give back.
Right.
And so one of the boys who graduated last year, he just graduated from his Marine boot camp a couple weeks ago, and it was so cool to and this is so him and what he's wanted to do for so long. So to see him take the horns and go through boot camp like that. We have another young man, Boston, who was one of Troy's sons. He's playing soccer at SMU right now. So it's so neat to see what he's doing with his life and how he's just taking life as much as possible, even though this tragedy came before him that we can't even imagine on a certain level. With the girls, just watching them go off to college, watching them make choices that are so mature for their age, and considering where they came from and what they've dealt with. These are just things you constantly see on a regular basis. The only downside is when these kids join the military, we kind of lose track of them for about a year.
Oh, right.
Until
yeah,
they
resurface. Right.
And
right.
that's when we kind of get to see what happened and how things are going for them. But it's so awesome to watch how they're, how they have transformed from these kids who showed up to camp and cried or wouldn't talk or wouldn't try anything, or were just, a lot of them are just angry. I mean, just so angry at life, and just see how they've blossomed to become these amazing young individuals. And I just can't wait to see over the next 10 years, where this goes and what they become in their own lives in their own right.
That's great. Now, with you having this property, are you planning to do more than 1 week at all, or what's that kind of look like to you? What's the future of this organization look like right now? Yeah,
that'd be the goal, is to be able to either do multiple weeks. One of our biggest issues is mentors. Being able to find. We have 60 plus staff members that show up every week, so that's a large portion. or being able to expand the camp, as Steve and I have talked about. I mean, taking what we've learned, is there something we can do with policemen's kids or firemen, or
Oh yeah, absolutely.
just provide emergency services, just because it's the same issue. It just looks a little different in those areas. But I think with what we've learned throughout the years, it's something that we can definitely offer. So these are certainly kind of as we roll out a long-term plan, what we're looking at and who we can reach.
No, that's awesome. I love that idea. And the thought process behind that. So what does it look like to be mentored? So what is being offered through the mentorship for these children?
Yeah. So, mainly we just want to be there for them. We just want to know that we want them to know that there's an adult who cares about them and cares about their well-being. And so, we just want the mentors to invest in them as much as possible, throughout the week. And so that's just asking them questions, helping them along. If they're rock climbing, helping them up the wall, and being in a river raft with them and going through some raging rivers. Because at the end of the week, when we do night them, one of the things I do is the mentor comes up with the camper and I ask them why they should be knighted. And what that does is the mentor then speaks into the boy's life. Well, I saw this bravery. I saw you being kind. I saw you helping others. And you can see it in their eyes and in their chest as it kind of pumps up, like, I am somebody. Someone cares about me, and someone's invested in me. And so being able to do that, we're hopefully building confidence in a right manner, that they can take with them regardless of where they go. And then kind of pack on top of that some of the traits we talk about, like the leadership and proactive and boldness, that they know what's required of them as they leave the camp.
Right. No, that's great. So, I mean, just a little bit of encouragement, and it probably sends these kids, off feeling great, like you're saying. I love that.
Right.
You also offer, tell me a little bit of how would a mentor be chosen, right? Like how does somebody volunteer? What's some of the criteria? What kind of work would somebody have to do beforehand?
Yeah. So if you went to knightsofheroes.org, we have a mentor application up there. So that's the best place to start. People can go there, fill out the mentor application, and then we can go through and find out if you're qualified, if you can make the timing and meet what we're trying to accomplish. One of the great things about this camp is the number of returning mentors each year. And these are men or women who give up vacation, give up time with their own families to come out, and hands down, these are some of the most amazing individuals I've ever spent any time around. I mean, just top notch. And I'm blessed to be able to spend my weeks not only with these kids, but with these mentors. So it's been an awesome, evolution to watch how these mentors have grown themselves and what they've gotten out of the camp and what they put back into the camp in such amazing ways.
That's cool. What does that mentor group look like? Where are they all coming from?
They come from all over. So we have people from Boston to San Diego that they come in. They usually fly into Denver or Colorado Springs and come up to the camp for the week. And it's been, like I said, we've been truly blessed with not only the number but the quality of individuals. Like that, I've both men and women. I've rarely seen that that quality of an individual that we have at our camp.
That's awesome. It's awesome to get those people to come back to. You got that kind of a consistency and whatnot. Liam, you want to say hi real quick? Yeah. All right. Say hey.
What's up, buddy? What's your name?
That's Liam. He can't hear you. I've got the headphones on.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, Liam.
Say hey, bud. All right. Head back down, bud. That's my little dog.
I can't pick mine up anymore. So.
No, it's getting to that point. They're all they're growing so fast, man.
I know.
It's crazy. It's like everybody always tells you, make sure you cherish that time because it does go so quickly. So and how old are yours right now?
So I have a senior in high school and a sophomore boy high school, and then I got my daughter's a freshman in high school. So I got 3 high schoolers right now. That's got
to be interesting
yes.
times. I remember myself in high school, and I'm not sure that I probably wouldn't wish that on anyone. So you've got the mentors, and you've also got, we'll cover just a couple more things in here. What's the moms program? What is that about? I'm still want to bring that up too.
Yeah, so when we started the program, it was kind of an afterthought. We were mainly trying to get the boys in, those first couple of years and try to do our best with them. But we knew especially with some of the younger kids, that the moms just weren't going to drop them off and fly back home. So we found some women in the community that kind of helped us, like, house them, take them on trips, take them to focus on the family there in the Springs, which speaks to them. And through this process, again, out of really complete ignorance on our part, it really blossomed because these women found each other in a deeper way than they were finding in other places. And so these women were also finding out, what's it like to go through the process, because there's a lot of hoops to jump through, when your husband passes, to get benefits, to get scholarships for your kids, to get insurance. And so, it's not automatic, and it's all there, but they just have to know where to go. And so being able to navigate them and to mentor them and to raise them up, and even just like the boys, we've had, a handful of moms that they came in and they were a mess. I mean, as you can imagine, their livelihood, their rock, their husband, their father of their kids is just gone.
Right.
And they had such a difficult time coping with it. And then to see these women, like, several years later, actually leading a portion of the program.
That's great.
Other moms, at that first year, I would have said, no way. I mean, I hope she makes it. She was just a wreck, but they've turned their lives around. And some of the moms that we deal with, especially the ones we dealt with for several years, I mean, I'm in awe of them. I mean, they're my heroes because of not only what they went through, but how gracefully they went through it, and how they impacted other people and spoke into other people's lives because of it. And that's such a rare quality of character and strength. But, we have dozens of moms that have done exactly that.
That's fantastic that you offer that. Now, how long has that been going
on? Since the first year. So.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we didn't know what we were doing with the moms that first year either, but it worked out.
Oh no! So that's great. I mean, look, it sounds like it sounds like an awesome organization. I think you got to be thrilled that you're doing it, and just you probably did you have an idea that, like, it was going to have this kind of impact? I mean, what was your first thought when you did it? Were you thinking, like, this will just be one and done, or was this like a long-term thing from the beginning?
Yeah, kind of. I look back, I'm not sure I had much thought about it. I thought, hey, this would be good. Let's go do it. And then you just kind of get through the first year, and then we were kind of like, okay, so now what? Yeah. Right. And through those years, as we were investing and keep growing, that's where we realized, or started to see things change, and starting to see these young men change, and moms telling us, you've got to keep doing this.
Right.
Moms were, this is how they keep their room clean during the year, because we tell them they can't go to camp. And it's because it meant that much to the kids. And,
sure.
And from our standpoint, it's hard to see that sometimes, because we just see the kids for that week at camp. But
right.
What they go home and tell their moms and what we hear back is amazing. And I never imagined the impact it would have on my life, and how much it would transform not only my own life, but as a parent, and how I relate with my kids, and watching my kids invest themselves into the camp.
I was going to say, do your children do they participate in the camp?
Yeah. So both my boys are out there this past year, helping out in various ways. And they had an opportunity to go on a mission trip with our church with the youth. And they said, they both were like, no, I'm going to go out to the camp. And that, it meant a lot to me that they see the value of it, and they know how important it is to me.
That's awesome.
Because for years, we'd tell them, like, they had to lose daddy to a bunch of other kids for a week. That can be hard.
Right. Oh yeah.
Always took it in stride. And so very proud of them and how they're investing in the camp as well.
That's cool. That's awesome that, it's awesome that they're supporting you in that.
Yes.
Exactly. Right. Because they could be other ways about it. Right. So that's great. So, Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So I just want to cover where people, so it's knightsofheroes.org, and they can go find all the information as it relates to this there,
Yeah,
right?
so they can learn more about our organization. We have some videos up there that Southwest Airlines and some other organizations shot for us, and see who our sponsors are, see how to give or how to serve, however they want to help.
That's great. That's great. I want to say thanks for sharing that. Now let's flip it over to you, man. Just all about you. And so it's about fatherhood. So just from your perspective and your thoughts, what does fatherhood mean to you?
That's a weighted question, but because fatherhood, and I was kind of learning this early on, right after I had kids, is just the importance of having fathers around. And my wife, she read some book, and then she kind of gave it to me and said, "Well, it's all your fault." You know? So no matter what happens, she was joking, but it's true. I mean, there's so much weight that the father can give, and really, and that was so compounded when we started this camp, because I saw the effects of dad not being around. And hands down, the greatest, between boys and girls, the greatest issue I see when dad's not around is confidence.
Right.
For boys, it's the confidence that I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. And for girls, it's I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not worthy. And that's something that no matter how much mom tries to instill, can only come from dad.
Huh.
And so seeing that played out, knowing that, with my own kids, trying to be intentional about encouragement, and trying to be intentional about building them up, and showing them that they are worthy, that they are beautiful, that they do have what it takes. And then the other aspect of that too is something we do specifically is ceremonies. So on their 13th birthday, I took them all out camping individually, gave them their own dagger, told them what it means to be a young man or woman. Same when they're 16 and 18, and they're just trying to one, show them that there's these pivotal moments where they need to move on, to a greater growth, but also two, that someone loves them and someone's invested in them, and they're called to more than they could ever imagine. But it's up to them to take the steps.
That's interesting. Where did that come from?
A lot of it came from Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert Lewis, which is a book that we all read before we started the camp, and it's been pretty impactful.
Okay.
He has some great advice about ceremonies and stepping your kids through different stages of life.
Right on. No, I recently ran into a gentleman, Martin Brosman, is in the Raleigh-Durham area. He and I had a really nice conversation about rites of passage and how we kind of really don't have it. That's what it sounds like to me, is like you're setting them through a rite of passage by doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that is lost in our society, and it causes issue because, one, we don't know, our youth don't know when to move on to the next level or move on to the next stage, because we don't have these ceremonies. So it's all kind of melded together, and they kind of fumble the way through it. Then we just magically expect them to be adults.
Hey man, listen, amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So when they fail miserably, we're like, well, what happened? But when you're taking them along gradually, they've learned through that certain stage,
Right.
because you gave them certain tasks, that this is what they were supposed to do, and you did it. Now it's time to move on to the next stage. And that's for the benefit of the family and the community. You don't need a bunch of kids running around. We need adults. We need strong men, and to be fathers, because that's a deficit right now in our country.
Right. Right now, that's all very powerful. I love the rites of passage, and everything you had in there. That's great. And I would speak to that too. I mean, I had a great conversation earlier today too, just talking about what I grew up without a father myself, right? And so that self-confidence issue, like, do I feel like I'm enough most of the time? Even now, like, I have my own issues from not having a father in my life. Let's talk about you growing up. What was your life like growing up? Was there a father figure in your life? And that.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. So my dad was very prominent, figure in my life, as was my grandfather. Spent many weekends going out camping with him, hunting. My dad, was very intentional about investing in me. He kind of, his dad was kind of absent early on. He kind of came back later in his life and kind of turned his life around. But he experienced that early on.
Right.
And so he wanted to make sure that I did not. And so he was very much invested in what I was doing and raising me and growing me. So I'm very, very privileged, to grow up the way I did, and have that understanding, which has helped me with my own kids. Well, in some ways, there's only so much help you can get, I think. But I grew up in Texas. Was very athletic. Played a lot of sports as you do in Texas. Kind of grew up with the mentality that you just work hard and you make a living and you kind of get married and live happily ever after. And went to college, met my wife. We started on that road, and trying to make life, like we thought it was supposed to be in a way that we expected it to be. And obviously, it took a turn, but it was definitely a challenge in trying to learn what life looked like as a young couple.
When you, all right, so there's a couple parts in there. First, I mean, sounds like you grew up like a decent father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was intentional, and I think that did you realize how intentional he was being at the time, or was it kind of like you look back and you're like, wow, now I see why he did what he did, or did he kind of lay it out for you and say, hey, here's why I'm doing this type of thing? What did that look like?
Yeah, and I think it is twofold. I was very appreciative of the time he spent with me when I was a kid. I mean, he would come to my football or basketball games. He was always there for me. I mean, he was, like I said, taking me camping and hunting and shooting or investing in me in some ways. And so I was appreciative of that, but I didn't fully appreciate that until I had my own kids.
Sure.
And it's just what that really looks like, and also the time investment, that it takes as a father. I realize, I didn't realize how busy he was.
Sure.
Kid,
Right.
he just his dad, but
Right.
he always made the time, and that was something that kind of really rolled over to me is like you mentioned, the intentionality. I need to be intentional with my time, with my activities and what I do. And so, that was probably one of the greatest lessons, I took away from him. And I was, once I did have kids, and I became that much more appreciative of how he invested in me.
Right. So there's that intentionality and purpose is something that you brought forward with you, and that sounds
Right.
great. It's also it sounds like there was a bit of an issue. I think I'm aware of, like, you had like your hip
Yes.
you had surgery on your hip at age 26. What happened there?
Yeah. So when I was 26, my hip went out, and the doctors at that point did not want to do a replacement. So they did a reconstructive surgery. And so they basically cut my hip in 3 places and rotated it in order to give me more coverage, and then put me in a body cast for a month. And so it's through that process that I had permanent nerve damage in my leg.
Wow.
I still deal with today. And so, and this is when I was 27. I'd been married a couple of years. It's just trying to figure out, at that point, just trying to figure out life. I mean, my expectations of life, of marriage, of being a husband, had just been completely turned around. And then it was about 2 years later, we had our son Dylan, and then it became, I had these visions of throwing the football around and being very active with my kids. And getting out of bed could be a challenge some days. So it kind of completely changed my mentality and thought of what it means to be a father, because everything I had planned or expected or wanted to happen was really no longer attainable.
How did you overcome that?
A lot of kicking and screaming, first off. And then once I settled in, it really, kids are more simplistic than we give them credit for. They don't really want some elaborate scheme. They just want you.
Sure.
And especially his dad. And so it's just learning how do I spend time with my kids in an effective manner. So, it wasn't, running or playing basketball or playing football, but, going to movies, having breakfast with my kids, which I do once a week. It was engaging them at their level, sitting on the floor doing a puzzle or doing Legos. That I can mountain bike and I can do some rock climbing activities. So when I feel up to it, can I take them out and do those things and teach them? And they don't care. I mean, they didn't care what we were doing. They just want mom. And so it's just being with them in that moment was what I had to wrap my head around. it wasn't, it wasn't what we were doing as much as just being together, which made the difference. And
Right. So you'd liken it to just kind of, it was more of an internal struggle
yes,
than anything else.
yeah, because your dad. I mean,
Yeah, man, I do. I get it. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they don't know any better. I mean, they never knew me as a whole physical individual. I mean, they just know me as dad's always hurt, and so
Right.
that's their reality.
Right. No, I mean, I can imagine how that kind of, plays itself out, right? Just because you want to be able to give them everything as a father, right? And you feel like possibly they're missing something, but they're not really, right? Is that kind of how it breaks down?
Yeah.
Right on. Now, I mean, look, from as far as I can tell, it seems like you're doing a great job. They support you, and I don't think that kids that don't love their family, they're not going to sit there and go spend that week. Like they go and help you out. So it sounds like you're doing an amazing job. You've also got this other, I heard this other project that you're doing with your daughter. You want to bring that up a little? Because I think that's I think that's a great one. Why don't you tell the audience just kind of what it is that you're doing with your daughter and how's that coming along?
Yeah, so our butte bug, is that
That's
what
it.
you're asking about? So last year we found this 1971 Volkswagen Beetle. It cost me a whopping $300, so it was quite an investment. But
I love how the price of those things never changes.
yeah, as you can imagine, it was worth $300.
Yeah.
So, and it's something that we're slowly working on together. So, we need to do some replace some paneling, strip out the paint, repaint it, put a new interior in, redo the engine. And so it's something that she wanted to do. And so it's a great opportunity. Again, not what I thought I'd be doing with my daughter. But
sure. No, that's great though. I think
it's a great time that we spend, one-on-one in the garage or just talking or looking for parts and what color we want to paint, what color the interior, those type of things.
That's
so
awesome.
It's been a pretty neat process so far.
How's she coming along, like getting handy with the bug? Is she helping you take it apart, dismantle it? Where are you guys at with that process?
Yeah, she's been good. I don't know if I'll find all the nuts that we took out of it, but she's actually, she'll go online or she'll go look up a video to see how to do something. So she's been very proactive in trying to figure out what this might look like, and something that she's investing her time in.
I think that's really cool. It's a great way to be you two spending that time together.
Yes.
What would you tell like an expecting father, if it's, they're expecting and they're just kind of like, I don't even know what to do. What do you just kind of look them? What do you say to them?
At first I was telling them, take a deep breath. I mean, even though it is all your fault, it's okay. And really what I try to convey is just kind of what I talked about is, they don't want anything. Your kids don't want anything fancy. They don't want anything great. You can buy them everything in the world, but if you're not there, then it doesn't matter. So how do you just intentionally invest in your kids? And because that's the greatest gift you can get beyond any, Christmas gift or purchase gift. Just be there with them and do life with them to experience greater things. That they will always remember those days at the baseball park or at the Six Flags or whatever it may be, far longer than they'll remember anything you give them. So to just take the time, invest, and don't too much pressure on yourself. They're going to love you regardless, and that's the greatest thing about being a father.
I think I love that too. I think it's a good point to bring up though, the bringing up the pressure on yourself. Is that something that you experienced at all, kind of initially, or and being a father? And what were, if I'm asking you, like even now, I said, dude, I'm putting like, I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself, just to be, and especially having the podcast. But I mean, what would you tell me? Like, be like, hey, just, you're going to be all right.
yeah, simply. Because I think it's something we all go through, mainly from the standpoint of it goes back to our own expectations. We have expectation of our kids, and those aren't bad, but we need to be careful when they don't meet those expectations that we have. And is it something that they don't quite fit the bill or they're doing differently? So it's up to us to understand our kids, because I laugh at like fatherhood books because I need one for each of my kids. I mean, they're so completely different. It's unbelievable. So you're going to go through that, especially for me, it's when my kids, kind of do something, negative or unexpected, I take that as a failure on my part.
Sure.
And part of that, is true, but I don't need to carry that weight.
Sure. Right.
We need to be careful because especially my kids are all teenagers. I mean, they are smart enough to make good decisions.
Right.
So I think as fathers, we need to give ourselves some grace sometimes, because I think and as men too, we put too much pressure on ourselves to be something or someone that's unattainable.
Right.
We can't be Superman, Batman, and Captain America all rolled up in one for our kids. That's just not realistic. So give ourselves some grace in this journey, and our kids will be better off for it.
Right. No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll put a couple of the costumes away. You mentioned the one book earlier. What was that? What was the name of the book again?
The Thrival Guide?
No, that's the book you're writing.
Yeah,
that's
the Raging Sloth is my
Raging Sloth, and you've got
Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert
Lewis.
The
Raising. Thank you. Raising a Modern Day Knight. What would be like another book or two that you recommend for raising children?
There is I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a Raising a Modern Day Princess that's written by a couple of women that was really good in understanding my daughter. And they actually have some really good ideas for rites of passages for girls,
Okay.
And what that really looks like and what they need. So as far as, speaking, how to speak intentionally in their lives, that it's going to affect a daughter more than a son. So that's another great book to read. Yeah, I wish I could think of some. I know, and I think you've had him on the show, Mark, yeah, with his Friday Night Lights. I actually went through that with my middle son when I take him out for breakfast, because just the nature of my son, he's great, but he's not going to talk a whole lot.
Sure.
And with the way Mark wrote that book, the specific questions he has in there, it amazingly opened up conversations with my son I wouldn't have had otherwise.
That's great.
When it came to finance, when it came to girls, when it came to different topics. So I was really appreciative of Mark and just the specific questions he asked in that book in order to engage your son.
That's cool. No, I've read the book, and I love the way he wrote it. And my kids just aren't. We're not just there yet, but it's something that he spoke a lot to the intentionality, and I think that's just huge. So that's a great book. You've got your two books, but I'm not there yet. Not there yet. But the one of the questions I enjoy is, so 10 years from now, if your children write you a letter, what would you like that letter to say, and why?
What I like them to say about me? Is that what you said?
Yeah. What would you like that? What would you expect that letter to kind of look like, and why?
With where they are now, in 10 years, they're all going to be late 20s. And so, just that I'm a part of their lives, that they still, I still want them to call me and, hey, Dad, I need help, or Dad, I have a question, so, trying to build those relationships, that I'm not necessarily a friend now, but I'm guiding them to the point, because that's really where they are now. It's no longer, discipline or instructions, more guiding. I mean, you're smart enough. You need to make better choices. You need to make better decisions. And 10 years from now, hoping that I'm still a prominent part of their lives and what they want to accomplish. And they don't have a problem picking up the phone and just saying, Dad, I need some help. I'm hoping they got most of it figured out, but as parents, we still want to be in the picture some ways.
Right on. Nah, that's cool. That's cool. Is there anything you would have liked to have covered that maybe I didn't on this?
No, I'm really appreciative of what you're doing and the questions you're asking. I think these are conversations that need to have as men, as fathers. That we're I kind of like with our boys at camp. We're not alone. We're all trying to do the same thing, and we'll only be better if we help each other. So
right. Absolutely.
Thanks for doing this, Brandon.
Thank you. I mean, that's the purpose of it. So I appreciate that at least it's coming through. I'm on the right track. So you've got the Raging Sloth, which is your book was released in 2016, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got your next one, the name one more time.
The Thrival Guide.
The Thrival Guide, and they're kind of like it's one after the other, right? And the Raging Sloth covers. What does the Raging Sloth cover again?
Yeah, the Raging Sloth is more my journey of chronic pain. So, as I mentioned, going through this journey, and it was about an 18-year struggle of trying to figure out life because I kept on trying to live like everyone else, and I couldn't do it. And that's kind of where I came up with the name because, I'm slow because of my leg. I don't get around as quickly as everyone else, but that doesn't mean I don't have a desire within me to do more.
Sure.
And so I kind of wrote it. I wrote that book as the book I wish I would have had 10 years ago.
Okay.
That would have helped me through the process. And so, if you're dealing with chronic pain or limitations or handicaps, just a kind of a guidebook to help you navigate this life when it's been completely turned upside down.
Okay.
And you can't imagine going on or what life will look like.
Awesome. And the Thrival Guide is the follow-up. And what am I going to find in the Thrival Guide?
Yeah, so that's more along the lines of, because I was having these conversations and going around speaking to different groups, and I would have these people come up that weren't dealing with a real, a chronic pain or some major limitation in life, but they were struggling. They wanted something more out of life. They wanted success, but they were stuck, and they didn't know how to move forward, and they were stuck because of complacency, because of distractions, because of just not knowing how to navigate. And so this book is more along the lines of how do we eliminate those distractions in our lives so that we can become more valuable and viable in our pursuits and create good work. And that's the thing I want to kind of get across is how do we eliminate those things, the cell phones, the notifications, the emails, the texts, the binge watching Netflix. I mean, how do we kind of remove those things for the purpose of doing good work? Because just like you starting this podcast, you have something good and you want it to get out.
Yeah. Look, everything else I kind of do, it feels good, but this it's purpose driven.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So this is,
but you probably had to kind of move some stuff out of your life, move some stuff out of the way in order to do this to the level that you wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of things that I don't do now.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I mean, it's amazing because I'm doing something that has meaning and purpose.
Right? Exactly.
So, but it sounds to me like if I'm just playing this out in my head real quick, you put out the Thrival Guide, then you've got a place for these people to go for like a week or 2 week retreat out there on the mountainside.
Oh yeah,
you get rid of all the distractions, man.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward.
Can't get a cell signal out there, so that's perfect.
That's perfect, man. That's kind of what people need. So it's great that you're writing that, and we're looking for that in February of next year.
Yeah, early February is what we're shooting for.
Awesome. Where can people find you on social media, and how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can look me up at EricEaton.com or EricEaton on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome.
And I'm on LinkedIn too, but I don't know what I meant.
That's cool. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for coming on today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate you and what you're doing.